Hello, this is Theron from Bricks and Clicks. We got another Mech Armor Monday going on. Today we're doing Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse while I build Miles Morales' Mech Armor. So it's a pretty easy build, looks like. We'll be going over the Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse movie as in-depth at least as we can. Anybody that might be interested in coming on in the chat and giving us some questions or anything like that, we'll see what we can answer for us. So let's see. I got my guest here. I got Todd, my brother, HTPB, and later on, hopefully we'll be getting another guest. Hopefully it'll be Chris will be showing up. We'll see what happens. He's currently servicing a bunch of people who are having problems in a storm. So we'll see whether or not he can show up. In the meantime, I guess let's get started. Anything else to say, Todd, before we start?
No, pretty much. We'll kick it off, I guess.
All right. So, story opens up as, well, Todd, go ahead. Story opens up.
Well, I guess to put it in a quick view, I assume everyone who's watching may have seen this, but it's basically it's a movie where some things are going to happen, which are going to pull some Spider-Men from various universes. All of them put together are considered the multiverse, which you may be familiar with from Marvel Cinematic Universe multiverse movies with Doctor Strange and Spider-Man No Way Home. But this is I believe it's a standalone away from those movies. So it's kind of introducing the Spider-Verse as a thing that'll have probably multiple movies. There's one coming up next year, and then there's another future third movie. But we're going to discover as we go how this is unfolding as a story and what's going on, and we'll learn more things as we progress as to how it makes any kind of sense at all. So we'll follow the timeline of the movie and make some commentary and have some discussion as we go. So we'll start out. Go ahead.
Hold on, I'm going to say hey, Joker. You said my mic is echoing. I can't seem to get this mic to stop echoing. Any ideas on that, Joker? Go ahead, Todd.
I was going to mute my mic and listen to you talking on the phone to see if I hear the echo too, but I'll just take his word for it. All right. Well, hopefully, I don't know how you're going to fix that, but we'll start out talking about there's a animated, everything's animated, but there's one of the Peter Parkers that we'll see is the Peter Parker we all know and love as far as we know. And the voice was by Chris Pine, and he's introducing himself saying he's the friendly neighborhood Spider-Man. Everybody knows who he is. He's been saving New York now for many years. He's got his own comic. He's got his own cereal. He's got his own semi-so-so ice cream pop. And he even has, he's famous for stopping trains and stopping buses from falling off bridges with his webs and holding up two buses at once and doing the dance like the Tobey Maguire dance, which he doesn't want to acknowledge, except that he acknowledges that it happened and there's no taking it back. So he's introducing himself as the one and only Spider-Man for as far as we know. So it was interesting that they put the framework of this movie into something that we all understood already as the reality or the verse of the multiverse. I'll just call them verses just because I don't know what else to call them. But this particular reality seems to be based on something that we all can relate to because we've seen this Spider-Man story before. What I find is interesting is even though they give the head nod to some of these Tobey Maguire events, like when he's sitting in the restaurant with MJ and his spider sense goes off and he looks out the window and there's a car rolling towards him. In this one, he bats it away. It's not exactly the way it unfolded in the live action movie, which is maybe a quick hint that this isn't exactly the reality that you know, but it's very similar to the reality that you know. And there'll be some more hints that this is a little bit different than the one that that we grew up as knowing as canon, according to this traditional Spider-Man story. But so he starts out with the movie as the narration, but then we start to meet the character who's the hero of the story, and that's Miles Morales. He's getting ready to go to private school. There's a school that he's going to that he won a lottery pick to get into. It's a gifted school, I suppose, compared to the neighborhood he grew up in anyway. He he's on his way to that school, and you don't know a whole lot yet about what's going on. But he's getting ready for school. He's listening to his headphones, playing his music and singing along every other word. Like if you ever watch somebody with headphones on, they never know all the words per se. They're just kind of like singing along with something. And he's getting yelled at by his father. Come on, we got to get ready for school. There's a frantic rush. It looks like he has to pack bags to go to the school because he goes there for the week and comes home on the weekends or something. And you see that the intersectional makeup of the cast of this thing starts right out because he's got a black father and I believe it's either Puerto Rico or Cuban descent. I'm not sure which. His mother. So they're all doing their thing, getting ready to get him for school. She's kissing him goodbye. He's trying to find his books and his laptop to get out the door. And his father says, I can only drive you if you leave right now. And he doesn't have time. I'm going to walk. And so you get a really quick introduction that this family apparently is a family of three. And the father is a police officer and not quite exactly sure what the mother does. But,
she's a nurse.
Huh?
She's a nurse.
Oh yeah, she did have scrubs on.
Yeah.
I guess I could have figured that out.
Some interesting things about that. His dad's last name is Davis, and his last name is Morales, which is her last name. And in the comic, apparently, it was mentioned that the reason for this was apparently his father's dad was a abusive person, and so he didn't want his father's name to be carried on, but instead wanted a good family name. So that's why his last name is Morales when his dad's name is Davis. It is what it is. But
it's a pretty cool backstory. Yeah. It fleshes out the backstory pretty good. So he's going to be late for school. So,
I'm sorry. I was curious about that. That's why I looked it up.
Yep. I did some looking up about some stuff too. So it's not, some of the stuff we'll discuss is beyond what you'd find out if you just watched the movie and tried to piece it all together from that. But hopefully this will make sense of what you see and maybe make sense of whether we even know what we're talking about if you watch it. But hopefully that'll all work out. So Miles is late for school, but his dad can't take him because he waited too long. So he's walking to school and he's kind of hip hopping along and tagging stickers everywhere he goes. Apparently he's an artist. When it first started out and he's listening to his headphones, he's drawing some stickers and they're kind of like my name is whatever stickers, but it's his tag for his graffiti kind of art that he does. And everywhere he goes, he pops a tag on there. I can relate to this somewhat because when I was in the Navy squadrons, we used to put our tags on other people's aircrafts anytime they came to our squadron area. So there'd be surreptitiously, there'd be new stickers for our squadron all over their gear. And then they do the same thing to us. So tagging your territory or pissing on your hydrant or whatever, I guess he's tagging stuff as he goes. So
that's pretty funny.
He has some shoes are untied as part of his look, I guess, and I don't remember per se whether he trips over his own laces or he just trips because he's not paying attention because he's tagging stuff. But he trips and falls right into the street and he lands in front of a car and it happens to be a cop car. And the cop car turns his lights on and he goes, oh, great, because he knew it was his dad. So he's riding in the back of this cop car and his dad's the patrolman who's driving it. And he's going to end up taking him to school after all. Meanwhile, he's basically scolding him for putting his stickers all over the place. He goes, those are yours. And I said, you're going to have to take those off. And he goes, no, that wasn't me. And he goes, yeah. And the ones at this street and this street and this street, which were from last week. And he goes, yeah, that was me. So he's busted. He knows his dad. His dad knows that he's been tagging stuff with his artwork. And apparently getting the vibe that his dad doesn't appreciate his artistic endeavors as much as he does. So we'll see more of that later. But he's not too concerned that his son is riding in the back of a cruiser, and his son goes, "Can you speed up? I think these guys know me." He didn't want to be seen driving in the back of the cruiser, and the dad goes, "No, some people might speed through the streets, but not me," and didn't care that his kid was going to be embarrassed. So he just keeps on going. And
well, let's back up just 1 second.
Sure.
Yeah, I am echoing. Where the hell is that coming from? So something, as soon as he walked out the door in Brooklyn, he was saying hi to everybody. Everybody knew him. He was well known, and I thought that was interesting because as soon as he gets to school, the exact opposite. He's a nobody. Nobody gives a crap about what he says. Nobody gives a crap about him at all, and they make fun of him. I thought that was an interesting reason why he wasn't interested in this very next conversation that his dad and him are going to have.
Yeah.
So
Well, it seems like he's only been going to this new school for like 2 weeks. So it just started. It's a new school year. He thinks it's an elitist school because not all of his friends can get into it. He's the only one, and it's because he won a lottery, not because he thinks he was qualified for it, even though his parents try to convince him that's not true. You're smart enough to do this, and you could have got into something like this if it was.
He did do the entry exam, and he was just the one out of all the people who did the entry exam that actually got picked by the lottery. Which, by the way, the lottery balls that are in the beginning credits are actually the lottery ball number 42. That number 42 again shows up later, but the first of the lottery ball, or first of the appearances of 42 was the lottery ball that he won.
All right, well, we'll hold off a second on the explanation of what 42 came into this for, which we will get to, but there's a part where he actually, it's blaringly obvious that 42 means something, so we'll talk about that when that comes up. But, it seems like whether or not he's struggling to meet his father's expectations, it's obvious his father does have some expectations. They kind of have a going at it before he leaves the house, or in the car. He goes, yeah, but shouldn't I have a choice? He goes, yeah, you should have a choice. He goes, but you don't have a choice. You're going to the school. You're going to make it, So he drops him off. Anyway, when he gets out of the car, he's obviously not exactly happy with his dad, but he's not upset or anything. But on his way out, his dad goes, okay, I'll see you. I love you. And he goes, okay, see you later. Because all these people are gathered around the front of the school and they're going to hear him say it. So he wasn't going to jump out and go, I love you, Dad. So as soon as he's walking away, his dad flips the siren beep and it's like, boop, 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 boop. He goes, you got to say it, Miles. And he's like, what? And he goes, I love you. You got to say it. Say I love you back. And he's like, Dad. And he's like, you got to say it. And he's like, I love you, Dad. And he goes, that's a Roger, and he's doing it over the PA speaker. So the kid's going to have to live that down for at least a month, maybe more. But that's kind of funny. And so.
Did you ever do that to your kids, to your girls?
I don't mind embarrassing my girls. I don't know that I necessarily done that like it's just funny to me, and I don't care if it upsets them. I don't know if I've done that. It's definitely something I would do, I suppose. So it was kind of cute and clever. So that being said, I'm going to pick apart a couple things that bother me about this movie, even though I like this movie. I like the movie a lot, actually, and I like its story. But it seems like they're trying very hard to establish that, no, this is Miles Morales. He has a dad. His dad loves him. His dad's a good guy. His dad's a cop. And he loves his son, and he wants everyone to know that he's loved by his dad and that he needs to say, I love you back. And that, you know what, this isn't abnormal, it's normal. And the problem is that it's embarrassing for him because it isn't normal. It is a little bit embarrassing. Not every day you have people dropping you off in front of a school and saying, I love you, now say it back,
In a police
So,
car.
yeah, it seems like they were trying really hard to make that work out. But, I'm just going to pick apart the things that I thought were a little bit forced. And I think this was a little bit forced when it comes to checking the boxes that they were trying to check in the movie.
I can see that.
So, so he walks through the school, and there's actually some funny things he says. He's talking to some of the people as he comes in and trying to play off the fact that probably everyone in the school already knows what just happened on the curb because that's how fast stuff spreads, and they could probably hear him on his PA on the car, even from inside the school. And he looks at one kid and he goes, "Hey, look at that! We're wearing the same jacket. Oh, that's kind of odd." But it was a uniform school, so they're all wearing the same uniforms. So it's funny, but it's like he didn't really get any kind of response from any of the people. They just look at him like, whatever.
It's
So he's wondering.
like none of them had a sense of humor.
It could be that some of them might be a little uptight. It's kind of an uptight sort of school, so it's perhaps. My wife Sherry just says hi, Theron. She's in the room, but she's off camera right now. She's just got done with her meeting. But
hey Sherry.
Hey, honey.
So while he's wandering to his class, he apparently is a little bit late for his class. So whether or not his dad got him there late because he got driven to school, or whether he would have been even more late because he was walking originally, but he comes into the class and they're watching a film, and he interrupts the class and he's standing in front of the projector screen, and the teacher's like, "Hey, welcome to class late. Are you going to get out from in front of the screen so we can start class or what?" And so he has some quippy little thing like, it's a science school, so he's like, "Am I really late? Einstein said that time's kind of relative, and maybe you guys are early." And she's like, "Okay, get to your seat." And MJ, who we see is in the class, she laughs at his joke, and then later she tells him it wasn't that it was funny. It was just there was a long dramatic pause, and so I just laughed. She thought it was clever, but not so funny. So no one knows who MJ is yet, and I have some interesting things to say about that later. But MJ is not just MJ from the reality universe, huh?
You mean Gwen?
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's Gwen. So I've watched so many Spider movies in the last couple days. Yes, Gwen. So Gwen is the girl that laughs at his joke and is a new girl apparently. He doesn't know her. So he has some of these awkward exchanges like you do with, "Hey, I'm the new girl, I'm the new guy." And anyway, so
also the movie he interrupted was our first introduction to Alchemax, which comes up later, and the head scientist, which all you can see is Dr. Olivia, and you see an O, I think.
Yeah, you don't see the full name yet. So, all right, so he's had this kind of a quick introduction to his school, and he's staying in a dorm while he's at the school during the week, and he decides to sneak out of his dorm room and go visit his Uncle Aaron. And so that's his brother's, or his dad's brother, and apparently he's the black sheep of the family, and he could be because he's involved in some criminal activities, but Miles likes him and said he's not that bad earlier. And so he's sitting there talking to his uncle on the couch, and somehow it comes up that Gwen is a girl at school that he met, and he kind of likes her. And so Uncle Aaron is sitting there. He goes, "Oh, well, tell me about her." And he goes, "Well, I don't even know her name yet." And he's like, well, you're obviously pretty new at this or something. He goes, are you sure we're related? He goes, do you know about the shoulder touch? And he's like, what? He goes, oh yeah, I know about the shoulder touch, but go ahead and tell me what you think it means anyway, just so that I can compare my notes, And he's like, yeah, right. He doesn't know what it is. He goes, the shoulder touch. Next time you go up to her, put your hand on her shoulder and go, hey, or what's up, or something like that,
It's just hey.
And
Hey.
so he's teaching them how to be a player, right? How to pick up the girls. And he's like, it works all the time. And he goes, what? And he goes, yeah. He goes, try it. And he's like, he tries a bunch of times and he's not really good at it. It's kind of like people who say dude. If you don't know how to say dude, don't say dude. You can't fake it, if you don't know how to say dude. And there's so many ways to say dude. I mean, you can be like, hey, there's an axe murder in the closet. You go, dude. It's like, you took my lunch money, dude, or you're late for a party or something. It's like, dude, why aren't you here? But if you don't know how to say dude, you can't say dude, right? Well, he's got the whole shoulder touch thing and he's not really good at it. And he's also pretty nervous. Something that is interesting is that Mr. X, I'm trying to figure out my notes here. So what's interesting is that you've got the good kid with the good parents, and he goes to a regular kind of school. He sees a girl, and he's kind of flirty stage. And the first thing his uncle wants to teach him is how to guarantee that he's going to score. So it's like, okay, I guess. Anyway, I guess that's all I'll say about that for the moment, but there's some more stuff we'll talk about in a bit.
There's a lot to unpack later, and I see the reason why if we just slam through some of this story, beginning story, because there's going to be a lot of conversation with some stuff later, so I completely understand.
Yeah, so just to keep us flowing with how the movie's progressing, otherwise we'd be talking about things, and if you haven't watched it in a bit, if you haven't just watched it, you'll be like, I don't even remember where they're talking about this. So we're trying to keep it in a timeline fashion just so that you can follow the story. We will be jumping around a little because as things reveal themselves, we can go back and remember in this scene when that happened. Well, now with this new information, it starts to make sense what's going on. So we'll probably be jumping around a little, but we'll try and stick on this timeline. So he sees some of Miles Morales' artwork in his notebook, and he's like, "What's this? Have you put this up yet?" And he's like, "No, I haven't." And he's like, "My dad's a cop, right?" And he goes, "Yeah, but this stuff is good." Or he goes, "I got somewhere we could put this up." And what they're talking about is painting graffiti on the walls, right? So Aaron, the good friend uncle that he is teaching him how to hit on girls and how to put his artwork around the town. So we're going to find a good place to hang this artwork. So he takes him into some subway tunnels, and Miles finds out that his uncle Aaron knows about this stuff because of some job, and takes him into some caged area and turns on the lights, and it's like basically a huge cathedral underneath the city almost, and the walls are all covered in spray paint tags already, and gives him a place to start doing his artwork. So he starts spraying the walls and he's putting his art up, and meanwhile you see this glow in the dark legged radioactive spider kind of thing crawling on the girders on the way down, and it's quite obvious that the spider and Peter and Morales are going to have an encounter, and that may be where Miles Morales might get bit by a spider. So you kind of know it's coming. So the suspense is building that this spider is getting closer and closer to where he's spray painting, and he has um, he has an assignment from one of his teachers. I don't know if I'm getting this out of order. The
Great Expectations.
Yeah. So he was reading Great Expectations was one of the books he had to read, and the teacher didn't like that. He took some true or false question tests and got a 0. So even if you had actually accidentally guessed right on one of them, you'd have something other than a 0 unless he obviously knew every single answer and picked the other one because he didn't want to stay in the school anymore and he wanted to flunk out. So his teacher, having pity on him for being a new student and that he really didn't want to drop out of the school, probably gave him an assignment with a Great Expectations book and said, I want you to write an essay on what your expectations for yourself are. That's actually psychologically a pretty interesting assignment to give a teenager, because teenagers, pretty much the prefrontal cortex development of a brain at that age, can look about a year to 2 years ahead in planning. But until you get into like college, second, third year age, the ability to plan more than 5 years in advance in your future is really just not anything that you can really wrap your brain around. So it's kind of funny that she asked him to do this, because I don't grade high school papers, but I wonder what high school kids do when they answer the question, what do you expect it's going to turn out in your life? So it's not too surprising that his artwork said no expectations on it. And his uncle Aaron saw that he was kind of incorporating some of that into his artwork around the words no expectations. So this is what he's painting on the wall. So at the beginning of this story, at the beginning of the Spider-Verse movie, Morales, he's at a school he doesn't feel comfortable in. He's not sure he fits in there. He definitely has no idea what's coming up in the future. And he's even put it on his artwork and his essay that he is not sure what expectations he has for his life. So it's kind of the total beginning of a movie that the character doesn't know where it's going to go. So that's interesting. Something about the spider while it's crawling towards him I saw is you see, like in the beginning credits, the animation fritzes or glitches, and you're wondering what that's about. Well, this spider on its way towards walking closer and closer to Miles Morales, it's also glitching, right?
Yeah.
But it's also doing something else. If you pay attention, it's actually changing colors. When it climbs on different parts of his sneaker or on different parts of his clothes, it actually adapts the color. The spider changes based on where he is. It's not perfect, so he doesn't disappear like a chameleon, but it changes.
Which
So-
sort of gives you a heads up as to something that happens to Miles. And so that's interesting.
Yeah, and in fact, he also has glowing blue legs. So his legs are like glowing, I don't know, like Siloom stick kind of glowing. So is that radioactive? I don't know. You can get some lead glass that glows green, and maybe you can get some blue, but it's definitely some sort of radioactive spider. But you have no idea why its colors change while he's walking, or the fact that his legs are blue. But this is some precognition of what's coming
the
down the line.
the spider is also tattooed with Alchemax 42 on it, which
Yes.
again gives you.
Yes, I think this is the first iteration of the number 42.
Well,
I-
that deals with him directly. Otherwise,
Yeah.
all you saw was credit scenes. But
Yeah.
but the comic book called it Specimen 42. It didn't specifically say it was from Alchemax in the comic, but I guess it's possible. But there are some differences between the comic and this movie, which always happens between a movie and comics. But I found that it's interesting that it was specifically tattooed with Alchemax in this one.
Yeah. Well, as I said, later on in the story, I'll explain why I think that there's going to be some differences, and we'll talk about that in a bit. So it's interesting that his Uncle Aaron is a criminal. He wants him to put his artwork up where people can see it, but he takes him into an abandoned underground subway tunnel where no one's going to see it. And so, yeah, put your artwork up on the wall and it's okay. Graffiti's great. There's nothing wrong with it. But let's do it where no one's ever going to find it, behind some locked cage in a vault underneath the city. So that was rather interesting. And it seems to me that nobody seems to care that there's anything wrong with putting graffiti on the walls, except the spider, because the spider bites them. So the spider knows, the spider's like, what are you doing painting these walls? He goes, you're going to pay. So he ends up, when he's finishing, they're on their way out the door. Miles decides to take a picture of his artwork. And while he's got the cell phone up to take the picture, the spider goes ahead and drops his fangs right into his hand and bites him and pumps this blue glowing liquid, like gene therapy stuff into his veins, and you see his blood platelets changing colors and doing weird things. And obviously, he just got bit by the spider that's going to turn him into some sort of a Spider-Man or something. Interestingly, he just kind of slaps it, not knowing whether that actually killed it or if it's some kind of weird spider like a bee that dies after it stings you. But the thing drops off, and he walks out and doesn't even think twice about it. Okay, I guess that's pretty much it about that scene. So the next day, Miles is waking up, but he's feeling differently. Now he's in the dorm room again. He's got his clothes that he packed for this week at being away from home, and his clothes are barely fitting him at all. And he starts sweating, and every thought that he has is like trumpeting in his head nice and loud, as if he's talking to himself, even though it's just in his head and it's really loud. So he's noticing that some things are a little weird. I'm sweating, I can't fit in my clothes, and all these voices in my head are my thoughts, and they're very loud. Right? So he runs into Gwen in the hallway, and here she is again, trying not to use her name for some reason. He asks what her name is, and she goes, Gwanda. Gwanda? Yeah, I'm from South Africa. I wasn't raised in South Africa, but it's a South African name. I was actually raised in the United States. She comes up with some bogus story about what's going on with who she is, and doesn't want him to know. So here's some interesting things that I guess I'll pull out here. There's a Gwen in is it the Garfield Spider-Mans that has Gwen?
Mm-hmm.
So Gwen exists in one of the Spider-Man realities that we see in the live action multiverse. Explains why every Spider-Man story had a little bit of differences in whether or not the multiverse planning was in the thoughts of the producers when they made each of these movies. Every time they rebooted the movie, they did something a little different with Spider-Man. And then when you find out that, they're all just iterations of verses in the multiverse, it all makes perfect sense, and it's all forgiven that there were differences. Two of them use web shooters. One of them shoots a web right out of his hand, and he's actually more like a spider than the other one. It all makes perfect sense in the multiverse world. And I mean, what an awesome gift for the movie makers, who couldn't ever describe why their Spider-Man was different, and why all these comic book readers were mad that Spider-Man wasn't the way they wanted him to be. And now you see, as we're in this multiverse movie, which is definitely going to show us more different versions of Spider-Man, that there are different realities, and these realities are all a little bit different, and that's all okay, because each one is valid in its own reality. Well, so Gwen, one would think, because there's no MJ either in this reality that I'm aware of.
Oh, there is.
So which one is MJ?
MJ is the one that's married to Peter Parker.
Oh, you're correct, sir. You are right. All right. So okay. Well, this still makes my point. Here's a reality where there's a Gwen and an MJ, and they're both going to be in the movie. So whether or not they were actual characters that were involved in the movie in any of the live action movies, this iteration of the multiverse, or this verse, is definitely maybe not the reality that you were pretty sure that we started out in when it was described by Peter Parker, telling you all the things that you seem to remember about Spider-Man from your previous experience. But things are starting to present themselves that maybe this isn't even the version of the multiverse that you remember. So she tries to hide her identity for some reason, and comes up with Gwanda, I guess, and trying to get rid of it. But he's not even paying attention to the goofiness that she's got and saying what her name is, because all he can think about is Uncle Aaron's talk about how he can do the shoulder touch, and he's going to pull the shoulder touch off, which is going to guarantee that she knows that he's someone she wants to know, and then it's all going to work out. So whether or not, well, I get, so he's sweating profusely too, and she notices that. She goes, "Why are you sweating so much?" And he goes, "It's puberty," which is actually something he thought about while he was discovering that he was sweating. He thought about this, and now he says it out loud. It's puberty. He goes, "Oh no, I didn't mean puberty. I mean, I already went through puberty. I mean, I'm a man now," and it's kind of all the goofiness that two kids that are meeting each other and trying to flirt with each other are going through.
Well, considering he's 13 years old, it would make sense that he's very awkward in just about everything he does. But yeah, it's
Yeah,
being with a slightly older girl as well, that he's trying to interact with and trying to be cool like his uncle, and failing miserably.
yeah,
It's completely understandable that he'd not even pay attention to anything other than, oh my God, she is talking to me, she's interested. I'm not sure why she's interested, but oh my God, she's talking to me. It's just everything's racing through his head, and
yeah.
everything for him is just moving so slow.
Yeah, it's quite confusing for him because he's discovering that he's got something wrong with him. Doesn't know that the spider's giving him any kind of powers or anything. Um, so he's awkward because he's sweating and doesn't know why. He's awkward because his clothes don't fit, and he's really kind of enamored with this girl. So he's going to go for the shoulder touch, right? So in slow motion, it seems slow motion to him, but he consciously knows that it may not be slow motion. It just might seem slow motion to him. He doesn't know. But he puts his hand on her shoulder and basically gives her the, "Hey, what's up?" kind of thing. And she's like, "Okay, that's a thing." And
Quite
so,
awkward after the conversation that they've already had for the last 2 minutes.
yeah. So once it gets awkward enough that it's time to remove his hand from her shoulder, he can't because now he's got the spider grip and he has no idea how to release it. So he's kind of stuck to her. While they're trying to figure that out, she's kind of tipping her head and he sort of ends up releasing the shoulder but getting hair stuck on his hand instead. So now he's got Gwen's hair stuck on his spider hands and he can't seem to release it. And people are starting to watch because they're in the middle of the hallway at school, and they start doing a dance, and his other hand gets stuck to her textbooks. So they're doing some waltz, kind of spinning around, trying to figure out how to get the hand unstuck from her head. And he's like, "I got an idea. I'm gonna pull really hard." And she's like, "Oh,
Right,
wait a
right
second."
before you do that,
Yeah, yeah.
she does say one thing though. She just say, "Just relax."
She does, but I know you're saying that, but I don't think she knows anything about him yet. So I don't think it's on purpose per se. Maybe. So this is the theory that's going to come out. So, okay, we got multiple threads of what we're going to talk about tonight, and they're all waiting to be revealed. So I guess you see the strain of us trying to keep back from talking about certain things because we're going to try and follow the storyline. But yes, I guess she does say relax, and it's interesting that you'll find later on that she's someone to listen to what she says because it seems to reveal that she's in the know about a lot of things. But she decides not to let him try and yank as hard as he can to release his grip. So she drops backwards into a back roll and flips him with her foot to do a flip to keep him from yanking her hair out, basically. And they end up going together to the school nurse to try and solve the problem. And you hear these buzzing of fingernail or of hair clippers as they're cutting his hand off of her head. And then it's kind of actually sort of gross. When it's all cut off, his hand is loaded with hair, stuck in all sorts of weird ways that are still on his hand. And she's got this big hand cutout of her hair down to the scalp on the side of her head, which every girl in high school loves when that sort of thing happens to their hair, because now they're going to be everyone's going to talk about it and everything. So
although now it's a little less problematic than when we were in school.
Yeah.
Now
Yeah, you do.
Now it's more like a trendy thing.
Yeah, you be you instead of being a conformist. If you didn't conform in school, you were the weirdo. Now, if you do conform, you're a weirdo. So there's a switch in about, 20 years it took to flip that completely on its head. So here's my comment that's interesting. So he is interested in this girl. So what do teenage boys who are interested in girls do? They think about the girls all the time. And what are boys active in doing? Taking care of business, thinking about the girl, right? Well, you don't want to do that, because you know what the bad thing is when that happens? The myth that you're going to get hairy palms, right? So you can't do that. You can't do that. You shouldn't do it. Well, so then Uncle teaches him how to be a player. So he wants to be a player, but he isn't a player. He messes it up so bad they have to go to the nurse's office to get the hand cut off her head. So he botches the whole player thing, yet he still ends up with hairy palms. I'm just saying. I mean, I'm just saying.
Wow.
It's kind of ironic. I'm just saying, it's rather ironic. He ended up with hairy palms anyway. So yeah. I didn't write the story, but someone's got a sick sense of humor if they did that on purpose, because that's pretty funny.
I'm sure they did.
All right. So we see Miles trying to go back to his dorm room, I guess, and a security guard for the school. Apparently, that school's got security guards. Not that we'll go into that in this discussion, but
well, it's
he's like, "Hey,
school."
Yeah, that's true." He's like, "Hey, I know you snuck out of your room, Morales," and he goes, "Play dumb, play dumb." In his head, he goes, "Play dumb," and he goes, "Who's Morales?" And then his head goes, "Not that dumb, but he says, "Who's Morales?" And he goes, "Look, you're gonna be in trouble." So he gets away and he runs, and he's trying to get away from the security guard, and he finds a door that's unlocked and he jumps in, and as soon as he closes the door, he's kind of stuck to the door a little because he's still got his whole Spider-Man sticky hands thing going on, trying to figure out what's happening. And he glances at the desk, and oh my God, it's the security guard's office and his desk, and he's got two buds in a picture, and he notices that he just hid from the guy who's after him in the guy's office, so that's not going to work out. So he's panicking. He's trying to get out of the office. He knocks some things around. Actually, hits a screensaver on the security guard's laptop, which starts playing a Spider-Man Christmas song. And he's meanwhile outside the door with all the students who watched Miles go in there. And he's trying to open the door, and he hears the song. He goes, "Hey, that's pretty good. I like that," And it happens. It's his laptop, and he's got that tune on his laptop. So that's kind of fun.
The script actually said, "That's my kid's playlist," but in the movie, he actually says, "I like his voice." So I thought that was interesting that they changed it, no longer blaming it on the kid, but actually making it that the security guard actually liked Chris Pine's singing voice.
Yep. So his hands are all sticky, and he's stuck to everything. He's trying to get out, and it's causing a mess, and he's reeling in the office. So this actually reminded me of a scene from The Replacements. I don't know if Theron, are you familiar with that movie?
I've seen it. I have not seen it recently.
So one of the players go on strike, and they get some basically some fill-in players, replacement players, to play while all the pro players are trying to get more money because they're greedy. And one of the guys they get is the fastest guy they could find, but he's got stone hands and he can't catch a football. So they put a stickum, they call it, like a glue substance on his hands so that he can catch the ball better. And normally that would work if you put a little bit on your hands, but they're caking it on, right? And he's got the stuff. He goes, "Man, can't say the stuff on your podcast because it could be kids watching this, but it basically doesn't look right." He goes, this doesn't look right, this stuff on my hands. And so he, I don't know, it reminded me of that, because when they go hut 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 or ready break from the huddle, he's like, And he's like, oh, no, he can't take his hands apart. And he's taking the whole time before they hike the ball to try and get his hands pulled back apart so he can catch it. He ends up catching the ball, by the way. But so we see the same thing in all the Spider-Man iterations. All the origin movies show Spider-Man trying to figure out what's going on with his powers and being awkward with it and not knowing what's going on. And why are my hands sticky? I don't get it. You know, he ends up spilling out this guy's office chair and out the window and falls out the window. And he's like, stop sticking, stop sticking, stop sticking. And he falls out the window. And now he's hanging over an alleyway and his feet are still stuck to the wall. So he looks like he's standing on the wall at a 90-degree angle. So he's perpendicular to the building and looking like he's walking up the walls. And now he's like, keep sticking, because I don't want it to fall now. And at this moment, pigeons are flying, and he's like putting his hands up and catches a couple pigeons with his sticky hands, and he's tripping and falling, walking all over the walls, trying to discover how to have these superpowers and know what's going on. At this point, Gwen spots him walking on the walls and sees him from a couple floors down looking up. And it apparently doesn't seem to upset her that much that she sees a guy walking on the walls.
Yeah, because all she says is, okay.
Yeah, she recognizes the phase, and we'll find out why she recognizes that. But so okay, so Miles is trying to figure out what's going on. So he's going to go back to the tunnel and look at the spider that bit him and try and see if he can figure it out. Because when you go online and say in the Garfield movie, he goes online to find out, hey, find out what bit you, so then you can know what's really going on. So he tries to figure out what's going on by finding the spider that bit him. So he goes back down to the subway area where he was tagging the walls, and he picks up the spider and it starts glitching again. And while it's glitching, he starts getting spider sense kinds of things happening. And I don't know if it's related to the thing was glitching even though it was dead, is why it started, or it's just all those symptoms were all happening all at once.
I've got some questions about that.
Okay.
As far as the glitching goes, why is it glitching? Why would this particular spider be glitching? So my thought is, considering what we know later about the different spiders, I'm thinking that it's glitching because it came from another dimension.
Absolutely. Yep.
So
part of the theory. That's part of the theory that we're going to discuss. So we have to introduce a couple more characters before we start describing Gwen in light of Gwen compared to the whole movie. Because there's a lot that's been going on that we can't talk about yet because we don't have enough information as a moviegoer, because it's a developing story as we go. And the first notice that we have that Gwen knows more than we know is that when she sees Peter walking on the wall and the pigeons in his hands trying not to fall, it doesn't surprise her at all. And she's like,
right.
You know, that's really the first indication that the audience has, outright indication that Gwen maybe is more than she makes out to be. Or at least it's interesting that his new future, perhaps girlfriend, at least doesn't seem that shocked that her awkward friend is walking on a wall. So, all right, so he goes back to the tunnel and he's looking at the spider. He starts having these spider kinds of senses, and he starts seeing a battle that's going on between the Green Goblin and Spider-Man. Okay, so this is his multiverse iterations real Spider-Man, and the one that we heard about in the beginning of the movie saying, hey, I've been the Spider-Man for this many years, here's all the things I've done, and here he is fighting the Green Goblin. Now here's another indication that this may not be the reality you think it is is the Green Goblin, although movies tend to stylize for their movie's sake a little bit different than everyone else. This is some huge Godzilla-sized Green Goblin. He's got wings and looks like a gargoyle from the Gargoyles cartoon, and half between that and half of the lizard. Um, like the guy from Oscorp that gets injected with I can't think of his name now, the doctor. The one that turns into the lizard.
Crap. It's his favorite teacher. It's the one from Spider-Man 3 and
So
Amazing Spider-Man 1.
So I can't think of it. And the funny thing is, I just watched the Garfield one with the lizard guy
Why can't I think of his
like
name?
earlier today, and I can't think of it. But anyhow, the person that shall not be named, who turns into a lizard, looks an awful lot like this Green Goblin. So you're kind of wondering what's going on, but at least this Green Goblin looks different than you've ever seen him before. So maybe this isn't the multiverse verse that you think you're in, But this fight's going on. Spider-Man's being all quippy as he's getting his butt handed to him by this Green Goblin, but he's giving some back too, and the fight's going on, and things are getting broken, things are getting picked up and thrown around. Parts of cranes and things like that are flying. And meanwhile, Miles is trying not to get crushed by this battle that's going on. And he's got some pretty good reflexes, and he avoids some pretty nasty squish moments where he would have been squished if he didn't have spider powers. And as they're all crashing into the ground because Spider-Man knocks the Green Goblin down basically into a deeper hole, Miles is falling into the hole, catches himself, but then slips and falls, and now he lets out a scream and he's falling. And Spider-Man picks up with his spider sense that someone's in danger, does the slingshot thing with two webs, one on each arm, and he shoots himself towards the falling kid and saves Miles, puts him up on a scaffolding, and they both spider sense at each other at the same time. And Peter Parker's like, oh my God. He was like, I thought I was the only one, but he obviously recognizes that Miles is having the same spider sense reaction that he has. So they have to continue fighting because some more cronies from Fisk are showing up, and the Green Goblin's still trying to kill Spider-Man. So that battle continues while Miles kind of stays out of the way. And Peter Parker in the fight ends up getting taken down pretty hard, and he's underneath some rubble. And it looks like he's hurt pretty bad. So Miles finds his way down to him. And Peter Parker basically says that they're trying to run a machine that's going to destroy the universe and basically upset the space-time continuum kind of thing. And you got to stop it. I was trying to put this thumb drive into the machine to stop this thing from going off, and I was unable to do it. So now you've got to do it. It's up to you. He goes, kind of promise me you'll do it. And he goes, yeah, okay, I promise I'll do it. He gets out of the way because the bad guys show up, and Fisk and a couple more bad guys are all standing around Peter Parker, who's laying busted up pretty bad on the ground. They take his hood off and see who he is, and he's got some quippy things to say, like, oh, you shouldn't do that. Oh, no, that's not good. And they have a conversation, and Peter Parker tells Fisk, you don't want to run this machine that you're trying to run because I know why you're trying to do it, and it's not going to work. And he goes, you can't bring your family back. And now Fisk completely rages because in all the Spider-Man iterations where this may have happened, Fisk's family dies, and Fisk blames Spider-Man for their death. So it pisses him off so much that you see Fisk come up with his big fists and basically smashes down, and he killed Peter Parker. So Peter Parker is laying broken and dead, and Miles is like, holy cow, oh my God. It's like, I got to help him. It's like, no, I can't do that either, because who am I? I'm just a kid who's finding out that he's sweaty and he sticks to pigeons, so he can't do anything. But he also is struggling with the fact that he just promised this guy that he's going to try and stop this machine from going up. So the best he can do is try to not be seen by these bad guys. He bumps some machinery or bumps some scaffolding or something, and all of a sudden the bad guys are like, "Hey, who's up there?" And it's like, "Go kill that guy." So now Miles like, "Oh shit, oh shit, oh shit! I got to run away and get away."
Okay, so the actual super collider, when they turned it on, um, when you're looking at the screen, you see some designations on the screen, E dash whatever. In the center is E dash 1610. Off to the side, and you see E dash 616. You see, let me see what are the other ones here. Excuse me. E dash 65. E dash 14 512. E dash 8311. All of those are the different Spideys dimensions that they end up. But he was trying to grab his and see whether or not his wife and child, Vanessa and Richard, were available in those. But when Spider-Man actually got his head dumped into the stream.
Yeah, before that actually. So we're starting to discover this machine. And before they lit it off, you've got these two cannons facing each other where these beams are going to shoot out of the cannons and make this collision, rip open space-time continuum or something, kind of like a Hadron Collider, I guess. They lower on a string that looks an awful like a spider person coming down on their web, but they lower a camera that looks like a home movies kind of camera down into the area where these beams are going to collide, presumably to bring about what Fisk's object is to bring about what he's trying to do. You start to see when that happens, these little black chaos bubbles with the chaos math, little tiny bubbles coming off of it in the center of this explosion collision. This black void thing starts happening because it's right where the camera was lowered into the collision point. When Green Goblin's fighting with Spider-Man, he dunks Spider-Man's head into the collision area where that camera was, which causes more black bubbles and chaos things to come out. So Fisk screams, "No, you're going to screw it up. Stop. Don't do that." But meanwhile, all Green Goblin knows is he's trying to kill Spider-Man by sticking his head into this explosion beam. So that being said, continue with what you were saying, because this is where he's holding Spider-Man's head in.
Because Spider-Man's head was put in there, it was the catalyst for what the stream was looking for. As opposed to what the original test was just to see whether or not the two were out there. So when Spider-Man's head got dumped in there, now they had a DNA marker. They had some sort of they had something to look for in each of those dimensions.
Yep, I think the doctor said they connected with like 5 of them in this particular iteration of the test, and there were some flashes of Fisk's wife and child kind of showing up when the camera was the only thing sticking in the beam. Now that Spider-Man's head went in the beam, now you can imagine that whatever they were summoning with that camera, which might have been home movies camera or something, now Spider-Man's head's going to summon something different probably.
And you see that when his head is, starts doing all sorts of weird, glitchy stuff. You actually see real quick flashes of different Spider-Men and the Peter Parker face, the other face, the one that's not blonde. So it was interesting that this was originally just a test. It wasn't supposed to pull anything. But again, the first test, which I imagine the spider is from, that pulled something in already. So obviously Fisk and Dr. Liv don't don't quite know what the hell they're dealing with when they're dealing with other dimensions, as I don't believe anybody in that situation would know what they're doing. But hence the problems that they start having with the glitchiness and the possible destroying of the world that Peter, this particular Earth's Peter, tells Miles. Then, if this happens again, it'll destroy the world. It'll destroy your family. Everybody will be gone.
Yeah, and so Peter, having his head stuck in it, saw some things also that made him realize that this isn't going to go well if they keep doing it. It's obvious, it starts to be obvious, and it starts dropping hints that Fisk is definitely rushing this doctor who's working on this to go faster and make the progress happen sooner. So they're rushing through, not doing the science properly, not doing any due diligence, just kind of like, hey, let's make this happen. If there's a possibility you're going to do this, I want my family back. So Peter Parker, before he died, before he got smashed, is basically like, I know why you're doing this, and it isn't going to work. You know, it's not gonna bring your family back, which makes Fisk mad. Fisk kills him. Interestingly, when he kills him, none of the bad guys are standing around him. There's this like a gorilla grodd, um, zombie-looking white dead dude kind of bad guy, and there's this guy that looks like he's called Prowler. You see him later. Looks like he's some kind of the Phantom looking guy. They're all standing around, and while he smashes Spider-Man into oblivion, they don't even flinch. They're just like, yeah, whatever, you know, because they all want him dead, because Fisk wanted him dead. All right, so they're chasing Miles. He's got to try and get away. Let me see. He gets away. I guess they just kind of assume he gets away and doesn't get caught. When the Prowler's chasing him on a motorcycle through the town trying to get him, he is using his spider powers in ways he's never thought before. But cars are colliding, and he's sliding through the opening between two crashing cars. He climbs around a street light, and so he's not seen as the motorcycle goes by because he kind of slinks around, and he basically gets away. All right. Now all of New York is starting to get word that Spider-Man's been killed, and it's on all the news, and everyone's distraught, looking at their cell phones like everyone does now. They're always got their head buried in their phones. They're all watching the news that, oh my God, Spider-Man's dead, and he was Peter Parker, and he was like 26 years old, and he's gone. You know, the savior of their city's basically gone. Miles goes to a five and dime store or costume store or whatever and finds some Spider-Man costumes, and buys one, and takes it up to the front desk, and he goes, "Can I bring this back if it doesn't fit?" And the store owner is basically Stan Lee, animated version of Stan Lee, and he goes, "Oh, it always fits eventually." And he looks behind him, and there's a sign that says "No returns, no matter what." So he's basically not going to get his money back, even if it doesn't fit. Um, so he gets the Spider-Man outfit, and he ends up gathering in a city park or something where all these people are paying tribute to the dead Spider-Man, because even if there's a baby cub that dies from getting shot uh, by park rangers trying to save the bear and take it somewhere safe, he bounces off the roof and breaks his neck. There's going to be a tribute on a sidewalk with a bunch of honey and a bunch of flowers and a bunch of cards. You know, well, even more so for the hero of the city, Spider-Man. There's a giant tribute, and everyone's coming to pay respects to the dead Spider-Man. And a lot of people have Spider-Man masks on, and Miles has put on the Spider-Man costume, partly because the dying Peter Parker, before he gave him the thumb drive to stop the reactor, said, you need to hide your identity because these bad guys are going to get you and they're going to kill you if they find out who you are. So part of it is he's sad that Spider-Man's gone. Part of it is he may be the new Spider-Man and he's starting to come into some realization of this. Part of it is to hide his face. Part of it is because he's going to this tribute thing. So he's wearing this poorly fitting Spider-Man costume underneath his jacket, but he's got the Spider-Man costume mask on at this tribute ceremony. Looks like we're gaining another body. Is that Chris?
It looks like Chris might be showing up. Yeah.
Right now we got your icon, Chris. So if you can, we need to see your face. And if you can't, if you're willing to show it.
I think he's still logging in. Probably
Yeah,
has
we'll
the
see
same updates that we had to end up having to do.
Could be. All right, so now we see Mary Jane, the Mary Jane that Theron, you reminded me, is in this movie. She's the redhead wife of Peter Parker, who just died, and so she's giving this tribute, and she basically says, you know, Peter was kind of a hero, but he proved because of who he was, the humble guy that he was, that anybody could be Spider-Man, and we all have a little bit of Spider-Man in him, just like Evan has a little bit of Elvis in him. You know, everyone's got a little bit of Spider-Man in you, and it's up to you to pick up the fallen efforts and justice that Spider-Man was doing yourselves to make up the difference because he's now gone. And Miles is kind of like, they're counting on me. And another guy next to him in another Spider-Man mask goes, I think it's a metaphor. I don't really think that they mean that you should start doing this, but you know, because as far as those guys knew, that everyone in the audience was just a bunch of mokes like you and me wearing a mask to pay tribute to Spider-Man. All right.
I actually thought that was a funny comment, though. I think they meant it as a metaphor. Like,
yeah, they're talking right to me. You know, it's like, I don't think they're talking to
no,
you.
they're not.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, well, I got to figure the Spider-Man stuff out. So I'm going to try out my powers. And he sees a comic book, and there's comic books that dropped from the sky all through this whole movie. Every time there's a chapter change, it'll show more covers to, you know, the multiverse crossover between two Spider-Mans. Well, he finds a Spider-Man comic book, and it shows Peter Parker's going through the same things about, hey, I can't stick to things. Hey, I can stick to things. You know, what's going on? And he's like, he also learned how to jump from a building, right? So I got to try this too to see if I've got these spider powers. So I'm going to follow the Spider-Man origin story from this comic and see whether I have powers as well. So he climbs up the skyscraper's spiral staircase, which is like basically, it looks like, I don't know, 30 stories at least. It goes down to infinity. And he's climbing up the spiral staircase. He gets to the top, and it shows him on top of the skyscraper on the edge. And he looks down, and he's like, oh, hell no. And you see him climbing back down the ladder again.
Hell no.
You know, nope. That's a whole bunch of nope. But when he was climbing down, he looked and he saw a building down below, and he's like, all right, maybe we'll try that building. So he climbs up the stairs again, and he gets out on that roof, and he's looking up at the original building. He goes, yeah, this is a better height. I could try this. He goes, okay, well, here goes. Spider-Man jumped off a building, so I'm going to jump off. So he takes a running stride to get to the edge. Remember, we said he walks around with his shoelaces untied because he thinks that's pretty cool. So he goes to jump off the building. He trips on his own shoelaces, makes a half-assed jump, and doesn't even get halfway between him and the next building. And he's falling through the sky going, ah! And he does a tick maneuver, the cartoon tick, and he bounces off a flagpole, does a triple half gainer, slams into the side of a building, bounces off that, lands crushing a taxi cab by landing on its roof. And then he lands on the sidewalk, and you hear this crack. And he's like laying there broken, and he realizes the sound of the crack was that awesome thumb drive that he was given to stop the end of the world just got shattered in his pocket.
And this is also where he hit this last sign he hit before he hits the taxi cab. knocks a bunch of numbers off.
No,
And
that's where those came from. I was trying to
yeah,
figure out those stupid numbers are on the ground. I couldn't figure out they came
the
from.
numbers were 4 and 2 that were next to him. Yep.
Yeah. All right. So
All right, hold
before
on a
we get
second,
to the
Todd.
40, before we
Chris,
get to
you
the
in?
40, go ahead.
Chris, you in?
Can't hear you.
Can you hear us?
I'm in. How about
Oh,
Hey, you there? Hey.
great?
spectacular. So
So
you see that we haven't quite gotten to all of the Spider-Man yet. The only one that's shown up is, well, Spider-Man just died. Peter Parker just died. Miles has his powers, and Gwen, who we know is something, but we're not sure what, has already showed up and gotten her head shaved. So,
and
Before you go any further, just out of curiosity, what your overall impression of the movie? Are we fans?
I am, after watching it 4 or 5 times, I am a fan of this movie, but there are parts about it that piss me off. But I am a fan of the movie. I thought they did a good job. I thought they did some spectacular things with what they did, and it is a good story, and it had a good here. It was a good hero story. So although I got mad at it about a lot of reasons, I think that it was a win.
well,
I agree.
I think that also it's a cartoon, so there's the funny bits to keep kids' interest is nice. Todd, the adult humor that you mentioned about the hairy palm, um, definitely
Hysterical.
Yeah. So it, I
And it's
think
like
that
everybody notices, everybody sees it, everybody knows.
Well, the funny. So Chris, you missed it. The funny thing was that if he hadn't ever had that shoulder grab that his uncle taught him, he would have been just laying in his bed thinking about her and getting hairy palms anyway. So instead, he botches it
Stepping in one way
completely.
or the other.
He botches it completely. Doesn't get the girl. Doesn't end up being a player, and he still ends up with hairy palms. So,
and then the funny thing about that is everybody knew that he had hairy palms. Everybody knew something had gone on, and so they're all laughing at him. There, So yeah, it was definitely an interesting duality to the scene.
So
Yeah, I caught that too, because leading up to that, he kept saying it's puberty. It's puberty.
yeah.
And then,
Why are
and
you
then next thing you
sweating?
know, he's
Why are you
got
so
hairy.
sweaty?
Yeah.
Why are you so sweaty? Why are your hands sweaty?
So funny.
Anyway. All right, so here we are. He just fell off the building. He failed at his spider powered jump. You know, they always fail in the first time. You know, when you talk about the Matrix, what does that mean? He goes, it doesn't mean anything. They always fall in the first jump, the jump program. So he falls and he lands and he breaks. The one job he had was to put this thumb drive in and save the world. And he breaks the thumb drive falling off a building, trying to figure out how to be Spider-Man by jumping off the building. So now we're kind of we're stuck at a thing that I wanted Theron to start talking about now. The 42. So he knocks these numbers off the building and he lands on the ground next to a 4 on one side and a 2 on the other. You want to explain what the 42 significance is?
Sure. So the initial 42 was just the specimen number of the spider, the original spider that bit Miles. 42 is nothing other than Jackie Robinson's number, the first black major league player, and they wanted to have the first black, in this case multiracial, Spider-Man to be pointed out in the same way. So they used the number 42 in so many ways, between the Powerball number, the lottery number that he ended up winning the scholarship was number 42. Slamming into the sign, number 42. The spider, number 42. So it was kind of hammered home a little bit. Probably didn't need to be quite so blatant, but I guess Jackie Robinson. You can't hate it. Spectacular ball player, but I don't know that you need to clue it in just quite that hard to Miles Morales. But other than that, there wasn't anything else that 42 showed up in that I can think of. I think that was it for the movie. But that was it specifically. The only reason for 42. Although the reason for 42 that Todd or I or hopefully Chris would think of would be what, Todd?
You got me. I don't know where you're going with this.
Douglas Adams. 42
Oh.
is the answer
Oh,
to
yeah,
life,
you're
the
right.
universe, and everything.
Like the answer to life, the universe, and everything.
It's because the Earth was
That's
a
so
calculator.
sad. It's so sad I didn't know to answer that because people go, "Hey, I have a question to you." I go 42 all the time, and people are like, "What?" It's like, don't worry about it. It's not for you.
Sorry,
If you don't know, it's not. It's
I
not
tried
for
to
you.
lob it to you, but
Yeah. Sorry, I'm just wasn't in that mindset, but absolutely, I answer that every time people goes, "I have a question." My pet answer is 42. So anyway, sometimes people know what I'm talking about, and then you made a connection. You know what I meant. That's good. So now we start to see a recurring joke or a recurring thing where different members of this movie have the same speech, only it's their version of the speech. Now we have Peter B. Parker. I'm the Spider-Man for many years. Until recently, I thought I was the only Spider-Man. You know, I've done lots of things. I was a hero. You know, I got the girl, and I screwed it up. I got old and fat. You know, and we're no longer together. Had a problem. I think he lose Aunt May?
mm-hmm.
And,
Yeah,
Yeah.
he said he
Yeah.
buried her. Yeah.
Yep, he lost his Aunt May. You know, he's gotten older. Finds out that MJ in his world wanted kids, and he wasn't quite sure he could give that to her. So he kind of gave up on that, and he's sort of wondering whether or not he's even wants to be Spider-Man, whether it was worth it, and all this stuff. And he's laying on his bed eating pizza slices with his beer gut and stuff, and that's when something weird happens, and you start to see these black chaos balls with the black spin-off chaos balls rolling around his head, and his pizza slice starts glitching, and he starts glitching, and next thing you know, he's flying through the air in a giant white sperm trail or something, headed to some place he doesn't know where, and he ends up in New York, and it's not his New York. So he's obviously no longer in Kansas anymore, and something's going on, right? Now we jump to Miles, who's gone to Peter's grave site, the Peter Parker that he knew who died when Fisk smashed his face in. And he's feeling like he's a failure kind of already, and he doesn't know where to go next because he can't figure out his powers without falling off a building and taking out a taxi cab that was parked on the side of the road. He crushed the one key that he had to turn off the doomsday machine. So he goes to the graveside of Peter Parker to basically tell him that he's a failure and he doesn't know what to do next. That's when Peter B. Parker, the new one who's older and 30 something with the beer gut, spots him and drops down behind him and surprises the hell out of Miles. Miles turns around and touches him and electrocutes him. And he goes flying backwards and also hits him with his web at the same time. So he falls to the ground and is unconscious, but now Miles has a Spider-Man web stuck to his chest. And he's like, so what the hell's going on here? Funny with the web, and I guess I'll backtrack. I hate forgetting things I was going to say, but when Peter B. Parker was introducing himself, not being the absolute awesomest hero that he's ever been, he said he's had a broken back. He's had a drone fly into his face and hit him in the face, and he apparently he's lost some battles and things. And it shows him slamming into a wall, and he's unconscious, sort of unconscious. And all of a sudden, you see the web shoot from him and goes, it doesn't go anywhere. It's kind of like a squirt, It's pretty funny. I laughed
Yeah.
so hard when I saw that squirt come off his hand. That was pretty funny.
So,
But
going back to each of their stories so far, with the Chris Pine character, I don't know if you noticed, but all the good things that happened in the trilogy, the Tobey Maguire trilogy, all happened in Peter Parker's story.
Peter
And
B. Parker.
No, and the bad stuff happened in Peter B. Parker's story, like hurting his
Yeah,
back.
yeah, yeah.
And he ended up losing the girl, which they didn't mention that losing the girl in Peter Parker's story, the blonde Peter Parker's story. But that Peter lost MJ in number 3. So it seems like all the good things that happened to Tobey Maguire's all came about in the perfect version of Peter Parker, or at least as when Peter B. Parker is standing in the middle of Times Square and he's looking up and he sees the memorial to dead Peter Parker, and he sees that he's blonde. He says, "Wow, he's a perfect me." And so it's almost like all the good luck all landed on the 1610 Earth version, and then the 616 Earth version, which is supposedly the comic version, the Peter B. Parker version. He's the one that got all the bad luck. I thought that was interesting that they kind of gave us a Peter that was flawed in order to have him overcome the flaws. And I thought that was an interesting way to go about making Peter Part 2. Peter 2.
Mm-hmm. And Peter B. Parker, when he's given that whole spiel, before he slams into the wall and shoots that little squirt web that doesn't go anywhere, it shows him in the shower like, oh yeah, and I've got it all figured out. And it shows him in the shower with his outfit on, sobbing and crying like a broken man.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I thought that was an interesting dichotomy that they threw that in there, and it might not be noticed by a lot of people, but I thought it was interesting.
Yeah, I got a comment later on that's going to touch back with exactly what you're saying, but I don't want to spoil what happens with that comment. But so much of this will tie back to leaving the timeline and going back to explain what already happened in light of new information, because it's definitely a journey of discovery when you're watching this movie, figuring out what's going on. And not only that, but you have to watch the movie a couple times in order to have the full discovery of a lot of things that you just completely missed. And I ended up reading part of the script and talk about getting all the answers and clues and hidden because you didn't really catch it when they said it in the movie. But when you read the script, you go, oh, that's what he said. Oh, that makes a lot of, and you start figuring stuff out. So if you really want to dig into a movie and figure out what's happening at some point, if you read the script, it wouldn't be a terrible thing, because at least you would see what they were trying to do in the movie you watched, even if it didn't match a book. That I like the book better, at least if you read the screenplay, you'd understand what you thought you saw, even if you missed a line or someone saying something under their breath. Or when people screw up their lines, like Kirk and McCoy talking, and like, say what you really mean. You go, don't mince words, Bones. What do you really mean? The worst acting in the history of Star Trek was that scene where he was talking to Bones about not wanting to be a captain again. So if you want to know what's really going on in a movie sometime, just read the script and you'll be like, wow, that's what he said. I never even caught that, All right, so here we are.
You have anything to say, Chris, first?
Say what?
Anything for Chris to say first?
No, Chris, I expect you to chime in anytime you got something to say.
I will.
Okay.
Coming up to speed.
All right. So we've got an electrocuted Peter B. Parker who just surprised the hell out of Miles, who doesn't know what's going on, laying on his back unconscious. Miles has a spider web stuck to him between Peter B. Parker's hand and his chest. He kind of follows the string over and sees a web shooter on his hand. He's like, what the hell? And he pulls his shirt open and sees the Spider-Man suit. and it's an authentic Spider-Man suit, not the one that he's wearing. And he's like, "What's going on?" And he looks just like Peter Parker, only he's got darker hair. So he's like, "What?" And he's realizing that there's something else going on here. All of a sudden, flashlights in the graveyard kind of thing. It's the cops. Oh shit, we got to get out of here. And they're like, "Stop right there." So he tries to go. Tries to escape by picking up Peter Parker, and everything he tries, shooting a web shooter off of Peter B. Parker's hand to try and get away and stuff. It keeps going wrong, and they eventually catch a subway on the way by, which yanks them out of the graveyard away from the cops. But meanwhile, he plants Peter B. Parker's face into blonde Peter Parker's gravestone on the way by and bounces him off some cars and grinds his face into the ground. Peter B. Parker's still unconscious, going to wake up and wonder what the hell happened to him, you know. And they're going through the neighborhood, bashing into everything you could bash into, basically trying to get away. There's a report. The cops hear there appears to be someone impersonating a Spider-Man dragging a corpse through the city. You know, all points bulletin and stuff that's going on. But somehow he gets Peter B. Parker somewhere safe, and he wakes up. And he wakes up trying to figure out what's going on, and he's all tied up with bungee cords and power cords and whatever Miles could figure out to tie him up until he figured out what was going on. So Peter B. Parker's kind of like, do you have any idea what this might be that's going on? And they're like, well, it could be this, and that's a bad idea. It could be this, and that's a bad idea. Maybe there's like a bunch of universes, and this is a multiverse, and somehow we got people crossed over. They're in the wrong universe, and they're supposed to be in. And Peter Parker's laying there like, you came up with that as your third freaking guess? You know, how did you come up with that? And he goes, oh, I saw it in a movie. You know, I saw it in class. We were talking about it in physics. And that was kind of a funny line. It's like, for all the theories that might be going on and characters trying to discover what's going on, that was a pretty cogent, like, theory, you know, that was pretty good. So that was a funny moment. And he basically goes, oh yeah, and I had one job, and to stop the bad guy from blowing up the universe, he gave me his thumb drive, and I broke it. And he goes, oh, it's a goober. He goes, I know what that is. He goes, what? You know? And he goes, yeah, every machine's got a goober kind of thing. So while he's talking to him, Peter B. Parker's trying to get untied, and he's like tied up to a punching bag or something. So he's like swinging and hanging, but his toes can touch a little, and he's spinning around. And he finally he goes, well, I could teach you how to be Spider-Man. I mean, like, if you're figuring out you got spider powers, I could be an instructor and teach you something. And lesson number 1, he goes, don't watch the mouth. And as he turns around, he goes, watch the hands. And he broke free, and now he kicks the punching bag right into Miles's chest and knocks him down. So now he's not the captive anymore. Now he's in charge because he's Spider-Man Peter B. Parker.
Did you find that kind of reminiscent of Ragnarok?
Oh, the spin,
Yeah, where he's tied up and he's spinning. He's like, hold on, until he comes back around. He can talk again, and then he also breaks free. I found it Ragnarok-esque.
So which came first? You want to look that up real quick?
I don't know. Good question.
Well, while you're doing that, I'll have a quick comment that I like Peter B. Parker's character the best. He's the most cynical, and he has the best one-liners. Everything's snarky to him. He tries to figure out what's going on. He fashions himself as some sort of a sensei Jedi master that's going to teach this new Parker how to do things, and he's got the best character, I think. I think whoever did the script writing for him did the best job out of all the characters and what they had to say. You know,
I don't know.
I like the actor that they chose to play him. I think his voice lends itself, and he is a sarcastic guy. He embodied the role really well.
Yeah,
I think he did real well, but as far as some of the lines, there's still one line that Noir says that I absolutely
I
love.
know that's not fair. You have the exact same line. So I was going to say, well, there's a foreshadow. There's only
Well,
one line
yeah, there's one
other
line,
than Peter B. Parker's
but that's
lines, and
okay.
it's Noir's line.
We'll wait till it happens, but because I'm pretty sure you and I have the same line, and
You could
Chris, you probably do
foreshadow
too.
it. You want it? We can foreshadow it if you want.
No, that's fine. We'll wait.
We'll have to remind me to go back to it because it's on my notes on this page, even though it's going to show up later on. But I did make a note that I like Peter B. Parker's lines the best, and the only line I did was something that Noir says. And so, yeah, I think our brains are wired together a little bit on that one. So Peter B. Parker's like, well, I'm going to go fix this because that's what I do because I've got years and years of experience being Spider-Man. So give me the goober. I'll figure this out. I'll figure out a way to make it, get another goober or something to make this work. And while he's climbing down the fire escape, he starts glitching. And he's like, oh, I don't think this multiverse version is working out for me too well because I'm not supposed to be here and I'm sort of glitching out.
My atoms are definitely not liking this.
Yep. So they decide they're going to work together at it, and Peter B. Parker takes Miles reluctantly to the lab, Alchemax, because they're going to figure out a way to make a new goober. So they're going to have to go to the computer that's got the code on it and create a new goober so that they can stop this doomsday machine together. All right. So they go to the collider or the labs with the data on it, and they're trying to sneak in. Meanwhile, Kingpin's there, and Tombstone, the guy who looks like Solomon Grundy's there, and the top scientist, who's Liv, is there, and talking about the collider.
Liv.
Nice.
It's from Spider-Man. Spider-Man, which was it? Spider-Man.
A little bit of a
And
reveal.
Spidey and His Amazing Friends. There's a kids cartoon, and I ended up picking these up because there were some interesting pieces that came with them. But
So, warning, spoiler, holding up the Lego thing that shows that Liv's got more appendages than just arms and legs, but that's good. We ain't got to that part in the movie yet, but so we start to figure out that Kingpin here is trying to do the collider to get back in touch with his wife and his kid, and wants another test and wants the doctor to move forward on this. And so here I'll give you a foreshadow just because I have to explain something that will go back to what we were talking about previously, and it'll also foreshadow something that hasn't happened yet. So Kingpin's family died, and they show how that happened. Where he was fighting with Spider-Man, his family walks in on him fighting with Spider-Man. It's like, oh my God, you're a bad guy or something's not right here. And they're like, I can't be here. I got to take my kid out of here away from you. And so she's running from Kingpin and gets in the car and she's speeding down the city streets trying to get away from Kingpin. And bam, a truck smashes into him and kills the family. So I'm going to call this the karma truck. And Kingpin earned the karma for his family by what happened and them seeing him being the evil, wicked Kingpin that apparently they didn't realize. So that karma truck actually shows up later in the movie and actually takes out another bad guy. So we've got two ideas that are starting to come together here, that karma for Peter B. Parker apparently is on the dark side of karma. Karma for the bad guys, also bad because there's a karma truck that hits two different characters in this movie, or three if you count the kid. So Fisk's wife and kid get killed by the karma truck, and later one of the bad guys is going to get taken out in a big battle scene that's coming up by a karma truck. So it's kind of funny. So chaos isn't balanced. It isn't. Well, it's more balanced because maybe Peter B. Parker's the balance to the bad guys getting hit by the karma truck is that Peter B. Parker ends up having everything bad happen in his life. So I guess maybe my theory where it wasn't balanced is wrong, and it is balanced, and that's how it's balanced. So we're developing these theories as we go. So stay tuned to me changing my mind in 3 minutes or whatever I just said. All right. All right. So they sneak into the room. Miles and Peter sneak into the room and find this computer, and Miles starts sticking to stuff again, and he can't unstick himself from the ceiling. And Kingpin and the mad scientist, female Liv, who's working on this accelerator, are right outside, and they're trying not to make any noise. They enter the room, and Liv sees Peter B. Parker, Spider-Man, and goes, "Oh my God!" And he goes, "You're a different Peter Parker," and she understands it because she understands what they're trying to do, bringing back Kingpin's family, understands that the possibility of seeing another Spider-Man show up besides the Spider-Man that had already been killed by Fisk makes all perfect sense to her, and it just validates that her theories are correct. So she's all happy to see him, kind of. She still has to kill him, of course, but she sees him as a good feedback that her theories on this accelerator or collider or whatever is working.
And this is
So-
where she does she takes a sample of his DNA and notices that that it's deteriorating, so he doesn't have long to live. If he
She
stays-
notices that he's glitching. Yeah. And she reveals herself as Dr. Octavius or Doc Ock. He goes, "Oh, you're Doc Ock?" And he goes, "Well, not to my friends. I'm Liv to my friends and Doc Ock to my enemies," kind of thing. But they got to grab the CPU that's got the information to make their goober and get out of there. So Miles, not knowing too much, tries to grab it all, and Peter B. Parker's like, "Oh, you don't need the monitor, you just need the CPU," basically. And so they start trying to get away.
And I like during this entire sequence, he is even kind of reluctantly, even though it's reluctantly, he is teaching him how to be Spider-Man. Little things here and there, like when he gets stuck on the light fixture and he's telling him, "You just got to relax, you just got to let it go." It's like, even though he didn't want to be like a mentor, he reluctantly still becomes a mentor. He's still helping him learn, grow into his skin.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, he even comments, I'm getting really good at this. I am a good teacher.
Yeah. I got some things to say about the teacher stuff coming up too, but they're basically running, trying to get out of the lab with the CPU, and they walk through the lobby, and he's like, "Ooh, bagels," because Peter B. Parker definitely thinks about food all the time, and he brings up some random thoughts all the time. If you read the script, your head will spin of how much stuff he says, and maybe you don't catch it when you're watching the movie, but he's got so many things going on. He's talking about, "Oh yeah, bagels," and he's like, all this stuff's going on in his head. They get chased out of the lobby. All the guys realize that they're not supposed to be there. And he took a bagel. They're like, "He took a bagel." There's a voice in the back that goes, "He took a bagel." And then they all pull out
Yeah.
their guns. So it's kind of like funny. Like they're chasing him and shooting blue ray guns and stuff at him because he stole a bagel from the lobby. And he goes, "You're not supposed to take those. Those aren't for you." Anyway, as they're going over the edge of the basically the deck that drops down into the property, Peter B. Parker says, "Here, have one of my web shooters," and throws it up in the air, and Miles kind of fumbles it and catches it, and they're going to try and get away together, and Peter's going to teach Miles how to get away. So we can do this. So now he goes, "You have to swing or they'll catch you." So he's trying to teach him how to swing. So here's where Peter B. Parker becomes the sensei, and Miles is like the karateka student, trying to learn, because he's like, in karate, you're always like, keep your hips square, keep your shoulders square, don't overextend, make sure you punch center line and use your front two knuckles and, all these things. He's saying stuff to Peter like, aim with your hips, look where you want the web to go. What is he says something about click twice to release. He goes, thwip and then release.
I love that.
Like,
Thwip and release.
Thwip and release. Thwip and release, and they're learning how to swing, and he's learning how to aim his hips and everything. So it's kind of funny. It's kind of like that's how you teach students in karate, just like that. It's kind of funny. So I enjoyed that. And the funny thing is that when he says don't watch the mouth, watch the hands, that was one of his how to be a Spider-Man quotes that he uses. It's the exact opposite of what Miyagi said to Daniel-san in the um the the Karate Kid movies. He goes, "Don't look hands, always rook eye. Always rook eye." And then the exact opposite, Peter Parker tells him, "Don't rook eye." He goes, "Look at the hands." And I was like, "That's not right. That's backwards." He wants to be a good instructor, but I think he got it wrong on that one. He goes, "Oh, watch the hands. You watch the hands, you're going to get hit." But anyway. All right, so so he's really excited. Peter B. Parker's excited that Miles is picking this up, and he must be a good instructor, and he's a good Spider-Man. He's teaching other people how to be Spider-Man. And all of a sudden, boom, there's Gwen in the woods.
No, Gwen actually, I forgot. As they're trying to escape, Miles runs into her in the hallway and knocks her over.
Right.
But you do not see that. All you see is her hair and her body, but you don't see her face. But he actually ran into her in the building because she was trying to go get something to be able to go back into the collider. So she was looking for the information that they were looking for the goober without even knowing they were. I thought that was interesting. Yeah, because she bumps right into him and knocks him over, and he knocks her over. But they don't say anything about it until after they get outside.
Yeah. It was interesting coincidence that she would be at that lab when they run into her. It's not, how the heck would you go to, I don't know, upstate New York, Hudson River area to this lab, wherever they are, and accidentally bump into the girl who is now wearing a white Spider Girl kind of outfit or something, so now that she's revealed that she's some kind of a spider character too. So now we have this interesting, fortuitous, random collision of people in the middle of the woods outside this lab. And I didn't notice that they collided in the hallway. But the other thing that I forgot completely to say is that when Peter B. Parker has the discussion with Miles when he's first waking up and he's tied up, trying to figure out why he's tied up with bungee cords and stuff, is they do spider sense exchange, and they both have the spider sense exchange too. So now we go back and say, why didn't Gwen have a spider sense exchange with Miles after Miles got bit?
She did, but Miles didn't notice it yet because she, in her storyline, when she goes back and says, "Okay, let's do this one more time," or when she goes back and tells her thing, she says that she got pushed back a week from then. So she'd actually already been here a week. But when she ran into Miles the first time, Miles didn't have the abilities, so she never said anything. The second time, that's when I said, she says, "Just relax," in order to get him to let go with his hand. And I believe that because that was she might have tingled from it, but he didn't have his what is the new spider, they called it Peter Tingle.
Yeah, his Peter Tingle.
The Peter Tingle. What Aunt May called it. So he didn't have that ability yet, because even later, when they first got to Alchemax, he didn't have super strength quite yet, because after Peter B. Parker takes off without him and says, "No, you stay here," he gets angry and slaps the rock that he's in front of and crushes it. And he looks at the rock and says, "Oh, that's new." So I think as he's becoming more accustomed to what's going on in his body, he's getting more and more abilities. So I don't think the Peter tingle was quite up yet when Gwen saw him after
But
he got the abilities.
he had it instantly when blonde Peter Parker in the fight with Green Goblin put him on the scaffolding. They have the full-on tingle,
that's
full
after,
power.
That was
Huh?
after Gwen. Remember, he went back into the tunnels to find out what the spider was after he had already ripped out Gwen's hair with his hairy palm.
Okay.
So he goes back down in there, and that's when he gets the Peter tingle with Peter.
But he doesn't get it in the woods when Gwen shows up in the middle of the woods coming out of the lab, because that would have been his third iteration of it then, because he felt it with two Peters, and now he's bumps into Gwen and he doesn't have that realization in his brain with the spider sense that he's in the presence of another spider power.
Yeah, maybe they just did that so that she could tell her story when she because they finally stop in the woods and they're all standing there. For some reason, they find that, you know, even though Doc Ock is coming down on them and there's people coming, you know, that today, right now is the perfect time for me to tell you my backstory, because why the hell not?
And because my hair looks great.
Right.
You know, the shaved head on one side, which is actually kind of cool haircut, actually.
It is.
They fixed up the handprint, so the people might not remember the handprint where his hand removed a bunch or got shaved off in the nurse's office, and it looked like a hand on the side of the head. Now the whole side is shaved, and it looks kind of trendy and cool, like she's a fashion trendsetter now.
Well, at least in 2018.
So I think, is this the part then when they're talking in the woods when she reveals that the spider sense told her to go to the Visions Academy?
Yes.
And that's where she should be. And so here's where I call BS.
Shenanigans?
I call BS. I think because of evidence for the next bit of the movie that Gwen may be part of the reason why all this is even happening. Because she ends up saying, now we haven't seen the next two movies yet, so we don't know if this will be revealed, but she says that she saved her father but lost her best friend. And she ended up showing up a week before Spider-Man shows up as Miles Morales, Spider-Man. She shows up in the right place, finds her way to the high school, kind of knows what's happening, doesn't seem surprised when he's walking on the walls. We find out some other times are involved with some more characters we're going to meet in the next couple scenes. She comes a whole week before any of this happens, and a radioactive spider from another multiverse shows up that's glitching, so it's obviously not from this iteration of the multiverse. So she either brought it with her or came after it or brought it in order to turn him into a Spider-Man. And here's the multiverse part where I'll tie it into the MCU kind of world. What if it's something like Doctor Strange looked at 543,000,001 possibilities, and only one of them saves the universe from being destroyed from this collider. And the one that is where Gwen goes back, brings a radioactive spider, which creates Miles Morales, and then he becomes the person he needs to be through these adventures, shapes him into who he needs to be the one that will save the world from this collider destroying everything. And she was in the know the entire time.
Interesting thought. The only question is whether or not the writers would have that much thought in the story.
But look at the Marvel Cinematic Universe with No Way Home. They already had this. They already have had Doctor Strange know that the only way they could beat Thanos was one out of 100 million possibilities, and he couldn't tell you what's happening, and he couldn't tell you how to do it, but he just knew he had to do something that was going to shock you and give away the Infinity Stone, which led everything to happen the way it would turn out so that in the end they'd win. And now Gwen shows up and brings a radioactive spider with her a week before he needs to come in contact with these other spider people in order to train him to be the one to get them back to their time zones. And he's the one that fixes it on his end, because anyone else who stayed behind could screw it up because he'd be glitching and in the wrong multiverse iteration if he stayed behind to do it.
But if that
So-
was true, then why did she allow him to stay behind? Why did she allow Peter B. Parker to tie him up and leave him behind when they went forward? And she said, I'll stay behind to Peter.
I'll explain that. It's all part of him being pushed to the point where he could
Right.
become the Spider-Man that could save the day.
Okay.
And so I've got the entire dialogue, just what Gwen says in the whole iteration when we meet some more spider people pretty soon. All the chaos that's going on, if you distill it down to what she says all the way down, she's leading people, including manipulating some of the other spider people, to lead him to become the person he needed to be to save the world. That's my theory. So this could all be like, nah, that's not it. But time is part of it. It's not just multiverses. It's multi-when verses. There's people coming from all bunch of different times that we're about to meet. And she came.
Shows up, she did not seem that surprised. She said, I can't remember what she said, but it was something along the lines of, like, it's about time when Miles shows up. So she kind of knew. She does act as if she knew he was going to show up at any minute, because she said it's about time when he finally pulled his
Plus,
shit together.
Who knows whether she's the same age, even though she says she's like later she says she's like 15 months older than he is. But why would she want to go through high school again? It's kind of like 21 Jump Street. You know, you're obviously more mature than all the kids around you. You know, Miles is still a dork doing dork things. And he doesn't know what he wants to do with his life. He doesn't know anything, but she's got to sit through this class waiting for him to become at least the person he needs to be. So, I don't know. All right. No.
It's definitely an interesting theory.
So I guess we find out that in that fight scene when they're getting away from Dr. Octavius and the Kingpin in the lab, that Spider-Man Miles Morales starts turning invisible a little bit too. So he kind of gives away that he's got some powers that other people don't.
Which brings
Yeah.
up that chameleon ability that you were mentioning about the spider as it was crawling all over him.
Yes, and when you merge the two DNAs together, that crossover, maybe the outcome is different than either of the people bring with them, but together they make invisibility, you know. So, and he also, when he electrocuted Peter B. Parker in the graveyard at Blonde Peter's grave, that was the first hint that he's got some electricity powers. Is maybe came from the blue glowing legs of the radioactive spider that bit him. So now we've seen the powers from that radioactive spider hinted at, but no one knew what they were seeing when it was crawling down the girders with blue legs and changed colors whenever it walked over a different color. Now we're seeing that Peter's got that camouflage invisibility, and he's got electricity powers that he got from that particular number 42 Archimex spider. All right. So maybe I put this one back in front of me to look at some of my notes, but I gotta save that paper. It's got more stuff. I've got like different colored highlights that I decided to talk about some of that stuff later on. So I gotta come back to those pages and not have to whip through all my notes. But all right, so the next logical thing is that the Peter B. Parker, Miles, and Gwen. Are you on? So which one is this the first set still, or are you on the second thing?
No, I went ahead. If I've got the mech is already done, and then I've got the Spidey and his amazing friends. I've got the buggy and Doc Ock, the female Doc Ock. I don't know, Walker, I guess, and then her lab, and the little spider inside there, kind of cute. And then now I've got Miles Morales' buggy and Green Goblin's flyer. Now, something interesting about these amazing friends ones that their legs are actually shorter than the real ones. Their legs they're medium-sized legs. I thought they were. That's another reason why I picked these up, is because, you know.
Does it change the way they sit in the seats when you bend the legs, have them sit down in a chair?
No, it changes where they sit, so they don't sit back as far. They sit
Yeah,
forward.
they sit forward, I guess. Yeah.
But the other legs, the ones for hobbits and dwarves, they didn't actually move. They didn't. You couldn't move the legs or make them sit. They were static. So I thought it was kind of interesting that in the this is 2022 models, and for some reason they've only put them into the Amazing Friends, Spidey and his Amazing Friends models. But I figure, what the hell, something interesting.
All right, so sanity check here. It looks like we are like 2 hours into this, and we're only like basically halfway through the notes and the plot line. So, do you want to press hard and go long, or do you want to break this up? What you got some models built? Do you want to talk about Legos and do a part 2 of this, or do you want to try and make it a super long episode?
Here's what I figure. If somebody decides to listen to us all the way through, they're going to get a full story and our full ideas of the story. So I have no problem with that without chopping it in half or anything. And one thing I'm going to do is start cutting pieces out of each of these now that I'm getting more and more of these chats. So I'll cut pieces out and actually put them as short tidbits of information.
Like a highlight reel?
Yeah. So that if somebody is interested but doesn't want to sit there and watch 4 hours of us talking about it, that they'll have something to watch that's quicker. So
I assume you're checking the chat every once in a while to make sure no one's chatting in.
Yeah, no, Joker's the last one that said something that was a bit earlier. So.
All right, well, let's press because it's going to take all night otherwise, so let's just keep going. All right, so the next logical step that anyone would come to is that obviously Peter B. Parker's got some issues that are unresolved, and he needs to go to see Aunt May. And so they're going to go check out Aunt May and figure out, I don't know why they go, but that's a good idea, I guess, to go see Aunt May.
Yeah, I think they were just trying to figure out what else could they do. Does Peter have anything there that could help them out? So, I don't know. I'm not quite sure why all the rest of them would show up there.
Well, maybe that's revealed in what they find when they get there. Because maybe that's in some of the other multiverse versions as well. Because they say, oh, I just had this and this and this, but obviously they had a smaller, not as elaborate what they found, but they knew that that was where they need to go because it's kind of like the Batcave super secret lair of those people.
I couldn't tell you. It just doesn't make sense to me with Penny and Porker.
Yeah, well, we'll talk about that. So they go to Aunt May's house, and she answers the door, and she's kind of like, no, I don't need any more well-wishers, and I'm sorry about your loss, people, because blonde Peter Parker had died, and that's good. And she opens up and she's like, "Oh snap, Peter!" She sees the Peter B. Parker and recognizes that that's Peter, and she also is. Aunt May is in the know. Aunt May knows things. Aunt May not only knows things because she seems to know things anyway, and we'll talk about that, but she also has had some visitors already, which we're about to meet. So she's like, definitely welcomes them in and says, okay, we got to go out back. And they go to the shed and, okay, we're going to go visit the shed. There's something back here. I guess the shed's where to go. And they go in the shed and they take an elevator ride down into this awesome Spider-Man Batcave kind of thing.
And that's where Peter B. Parker's comment here is that it's a bit pretentious.
Yeah, it's a lot nicer than any of the other ones I've ever seen, But they've got suits and gadgets and vehicles. It looks like Iron Man's what do they call that? The protocol. Is it something Doomsday Protocol or something that they called it when they had all those suits that he pulls out.
Yeah, we're in Iron Man 3 where he had everybody come out.
Yep. I don't know where I put that comment, but there's basically it looks like there's a suit for every occasion, like the Batman's got the Mr. Freeze suit and the underwater suit and the different suits you could get from different action figures you could buy at the store, not knowing whether or not they actually tie to a comic story anywhere, but someone thought it'd be cool to make a Batman suit that he could fight Superman in, like an armored Batman suit, and which actually was in one of the movies. But so they go down there and there's really cool. There's like a car down there and there's some suits. And what are the other things they see down there?
There's a car that looks just like this, actually.
Yep, the one that you built. And they also all of a sudden see a whole bunch of eyes light up, and apparently there's some more spider people that have gotten there already, because Aunt May's place is the place that everyone thinks that they need to go if they've got some sort of a spider identity. They got to go see Aunt May. So we find out that there are 3 more Spider-Man iterations. There's Spider-Man Noir, who's Nicolas Cage's voice. He's all black and white, and he looks like he's from the 30s or something. Old gangster-looking guy with different outfits that don't match anyone else, and they're completely black and white. You got Penny Parker, who's like a anime, Japanese animation little girl with her psychic link to a radioactive spider, and they're best friends, and they fight in their father's battle mech armor as some symbiotic fighting duo fighting in this mech armor. And then you've got Spider Ham, who is like an Animaniacs cartoon looking pig that has also been sucked into the multiverse rip that was caused by this device. And the first thing he says is he walks up and goes to shake their hand. He goes, "My hands are wet." And he goes, "It's because I washed them. It's not because of any other reason." It's just kind of like, ew, not shaking your hand, Whatever he was.
I'm sorry.
He was obviously excited about the spider cave, just like everyone else, and might have been taking care of business in the dark corner or something. I don't know.
That's entirely
But
this
in
is,
one of the
this was one of the lines from Noir that I liked. There was 2 actually from Noir that I liked, but this one was Peter B. Parker says, "Where's that wind coming from?" And Noir says, "Wherever I go, the wind follows, and the wind smells like rain." It's just, that's just awesome.
Yeah, it's kind of like Sin City kind of thing going on there too.
The wind smells like rain. It's just awesome.
Yeah.
But the best line is still later.
It is. And they're eventually, they are going to get to telling their stories and everything. But
I think they tell them right now, don't they?
yeah. It's interesting that when they're introducing themselves, the Spider Ham in the, not the script, but in the synopsis or the original thing, there was a script version out there where he said he was a spider who was bitten by a radioactive pig. And they took that out of this and just said that he was bitten by a radioactive pig, but they didn't say that he wasn't a pig before. But apparently it got cut because someone thought it was just weird or stupid. But apparently in one iteration that was changed later, he was a spider, ironically, that was bit by a radioactive pig, and now he's Spider Ham. You know?
Well, he does in his third of the screen, because they chop it into three. It does show a spider, and I didn't follow what he was saying because I couldn't hear it over the other two speaking, since they kind of put all three of them together. But they did show a spider, and then it got bit by something, and it turned into a pig. So I didn't quite follow that was all going on at once. And since I didn't actually look up Spider Ham's origin, I guess I didn't even recognize that. That's funny as hell.
Yeah. But in this scene, when they all come together now, all of their spider senses all go off, and they all realize that I'm in the presence of all these other spider people, and they all share the spider tingle together when this happens. So,
Peter Tingle. It's all about the Peter Tingle.
yep. So Aunt May knows all, and she's really funny. She pulls out name tags, "Hello, my name is" things, and he goes, "You're going to need these," and hands out these stickers as soon as they come down, because they're about to meet 3 more Spider-Verse Spider-Men. And it works out because Miles loves stickers, and he tags stickers everywhere he goes in the beginning of the movie. So now he's got some more "My name is" stickers so that they can make sense of everything, and that's how Miles makes sense of things. So May knows more than she lets on. Aunt May knows everything. It's kind of cool that she's in such command of what's happening around her, and it doesn't faze her at all. Now she's already gotten over the death of blonde Spider-Man Peter Parker, so maybe she's a little bit more cynical, and at least she's still in the game because she's got all these people coming to her, and now she's back in it again. But she's the man in the chair. She's the Ned to Tom Holland, and she's the Batwoman to the crippled Batwoman to Batman in the Batcave. And
Oracle.
she was,
Oracle.
Yeah, she was the one who made Spider-Man's wrist rockets web shooters, because later she's going to make a set for Miles, and so all the gadgets that are in this cave, all those suits are probably made by Aunt May. So this iteration is not the multiverse iteration that we live in. We have been in one that's similar enough to the one that we recognize that we get what's going on. But now we've seen Dr. Octavius as a woman, which is a first.
And Aunt May calls her out by name, Liv. And remember, she said earlier, Dr. Ock said, only my enemies call me Doc Ock. My friends call me Liv.
Right.
So she's friends with Liv.
Yeah.
So she definitely has a history of creating stuff. So it's possible that this particular Peter, the blonde one, maybe he didn't have the quite as much technical knowledge, or maybe he just got the intelligence from her side of the family. I don't know, but she definitely had something to do with that spider cave.
So here we get to the part where they're going to try and realize that they all have to be returned back to their own worlds, and someone's going to have to stop this collider and shut it down. They're going to have to make a goober to do it, and and everyone pretty much um, doesn't really know what's going on yet, except that they're all in on whatever they have to do. Miles comes up and he basically goes, "But you guys don't get it. None of you guys can stay here. If you stay here, you'll die. I'm the guy that's got to turn it off." He goes, "And I'm going to get you all home before I do." He goes, "Look, I made a promise, so I have to keep it." And all of a sudden, Noir goes, "Who are you again?" You know, because he's like, "Who's this guy?" And it goes, Peter B. Parker goes, "This is Miles, and he's going to save the multiverse." And Gwen, who seems, I think, to know more than she lets on to anybody else, says, "Look, I've seen him in action. He's got potential. I think he's going to get us home." You know, so Gwen knows that Miles is the one that ought to do it. So she already knows more than she's letting on, because nobody else knows that he's the one that has to do it. Peter B. Parker would love for him to say that he's going to be the one to do it. Let me show you what these powers are that he has that nobody else has. And as soon as he does this, he fails trying to show what he can do. Like, "Show me your electricity power," and he can't. And he goes, "Show me your invisibility power," and he can't. And everyone's like, "Well, can you do this? Can you reprogram or create a program while you're being attacked by a bunch of people?" Penny says. And are you brave and are you strong and all that's going on?
And Noir's best line.
Huh?
And Noir's best line.
Okay, go ahead.
Well, hold on before we get there. Gwen hasn't seen him do a whole lot yet. She says just there, you said, "I've seen him in action," but she really hasn't. The only thing she's seen him do is tear.
He was beating up some pigeons pretty well.
Yep.
I mean,
she tore out his hair. She beat it. He beat up some pigeons. She watched him run away while invisible, but
and learn how to swing on a
and learn how to swing, but not attack anybody. She attacked Octavius. She attacked Doc Ock. With when the music got all heavy and rock, and she ended up putting the beat down, but he didn't. So your theory, although I still have reservations about it, could make sense because she hasn't seen him do anything yet. Here she is saying, "I've seen him in action."
Yes, which might be a tell that some things are going on, that she knows stuff that she's not letting anyone else know that she knows. So they're going to show, Peter B. Parker's going to show the rest of the spider people what Miles can do. I was trying to figure out. Well, now that we've introduced really quick the other spider people, so Spider-Man Noir is from 1933. Penny is from the future, 3145. This is where I think that there's more about the multiverse interruption created by this machine as it relates to time than we've been known until just now. We know that Gwen showed up a week early.
Well,
is all we knew.
She actually described that when she got hit with the black bubbly balls, because when she gets hit with black balls, stuff happens.
Yeah.
Sorry. And
keep going.
So she ends up when she bounces here to New York, it's actually mentioned by her that she got literally blown into last week. So I don't know if that could have been fixed or not, as something she could have ended up doing. But either way, she mentioned she got blown into last week. The other ones, they all hit at different times than Peter B. Parker, because in their stories they all hit the wall too, or hit LED lights in downtown New York, and what the hell's the square called again? The square that,
Sorry.
huh?
Times Square.
Times Square.
Time.
They all hit flashing LED signs too, and said, well, that's where Noir says, I guess the story wasn't that long, since all of them, basically just said that they bounced into our dimension and slapped into the wall. So I'm not sure how long each of those were in our dimension, because they probably hit at different times as well then, and eventually all made their way to Aunt May.
Well, we are also assuming that the people we see are in the same timeline from the beginning of this movie to the end, and that you're not seeing anyone jumping back in time to pick up some more of the red fluid from Dr. Pym, or where were all the stones together at the same time kind of thing. Because if Gwen's seen him in action and knows he's got potential, is this the Gwen from the timeline that started in the beginning of this movie? Or is she jumping around? Who knows? Because that was all part of the multiverse way that they defeated Thanos. And so maybe there's some clever stuff going on. If you're going to write 2 more movies, then there's a lot of avenues you could dig into this story to create a plausible another couple movies based on what we know about how the multiverse works in some of these other movies. So I don't know. Maybe it gives bad writers an easy out, but they've got some outs that they could execute here. So Miles is supposed to perform his powers in front of everybody and doesn't do so well. But it kind of reminds me of the military. When you're doing a urinalysis, you could be drinking like 5 gallons of water and you're ready to go because you found out that morning that you had a urinalysis and you've got like 2 or 3 hours to show up for it. And so you're drinking all the water you can so you're not like piss shy in front of another guy who's staring at your junk while you're trying to take a piss. And you just can't do it, Did you see, you've seen Shenanigans or Waiting, right, with Ryan Reynolds?
Yes.
You guys have seen that?
Yeah.
It's we need Bishop to sit here and explain to Miles how to perform, because maybe he's got some psychosomatic auditory hallucinations or something that he's hearing that keeps him from performing. But it's like having a shy bladder when you're in the urinalysis, when some guy's just staring at you, just don't look, you make it crawl back up, or don't speak, you make it crawl back up. Anyway, so he's less than impressive to all the other spider people at his first going at it, but I guess they kind of give him the benefit of the doubt because they don't give up on him yet on whether or not he's going to be the one. But he made the promise to the blonde Peter that he's got to do it, and they've got to go back to their own times for everything to be right. So he's got to be the person.
But he actually takes off then while they're talking about him, and this is the lines that one of the lines from Noir. Let's see.
Yeah, he gets they all tell him what had happened, and he's kind of like, is that now or is it later when he says the line you're trying to say?
It's right now, because this is where Penny, where everybody's like rapid fire questioning him, is whether or not he's going to be able to perform under duress. And Noir says, what the hell is it? I got it in here, but do you have it, Todd?
I only know the gist of it. Are you talking about the one where he says, "Man, this multiverse Spider-Man issue's got a dark. This is kind of dark." Is that the one you're talking about?
No,
huh?
that's not the line I'm talking about. Oh, so
Oh.
you didn't have the exact same line.
Well, the line that he said, he goes, "Man, this is dark," reminded me of Deadpool when he's like being tortured by Francis, and he's like, "You're so dark. Are you from the DC universe?" And like Noir goes, "Man, this universe, that's a dark story. Damn." It's like respect, your story's darker than mine kind of thing. But so I'm not sure which quote you're saying now, but Noir does have some good lines, but I still think Peter B. Parker's lines are the best lines in in the movie. So Wally's being kind of like proven that he doesn't have the stuff together, and he gets kind of embarrassed that he can't perform. He turns invisible while they're all arguing about it, and he rides the elevator to take off. And he's reeling now, not knowing what to do. So the fallback that he's got is he's going to go see his Uncle Aaron, because Uncle Aaron gets him more than anybody else, and he's starting to run out of people that believe that he can do anything. So he goes to Aaron's house, and meanwhile,
here's the line. Can you
okay.
close off your feelings so you don't get crippled by the moral ambiguity of your violent actions?
Yep, that's when they were trying to say, do you have this skill? Do you have that?
Do you have the ability to do the job? Yep.
He's strong. He goes, can you
close
turn
off your feelings so you don't get crippled by the moral ambiguity of your violent actions? I thought that was funny.
Well, that's pretty deep coming from Nicolas Cage about whether he's conflicted by the people that he causes harm carrying out his duties, which is good for Marvel characters to have, because obviously the Avengers lost sight of that, but we won't go there. The Sokovia Accords or whatever.
We went there before.
Yeah. So meanwhile, Miles' dad, Jeff Davis, the cop, and his mom, Rio, are trying to find him. So they're leaving messages on Aaron's phone, and Aaron's not answering, basically because, as far as anyone knows, he's out of town and no one knows what he's doing. But Miles goes to his house because he's looking for some kind of answers from him. And while he's there, all of a sudden you get this Prowler music, and he's got some good theme music that actually drives terror into people when they hear it, and builds up the stress in the scene. And Prowler now is climbing through Aaron's window, presumably because he followed Miles there, and Miles now has to do whatever he can to not get found by Prowler so he doesn't get taken out, while he's sneaking around the corner of a couch or wherever to get away from Prowler, who can't seem to see him, even though he knows something's there because he's got some villain sense and knows that there's something off and someone's in his apartment. Well, I just blew that, but someone's in the apartment. He comes around the corner, and right when you think, oh, Miles got caught, nope, Miles is invisible, and Prowler's face is right up in his face, but he can't see him. And just then he gets a phone call from Fisk saying, what's his status or whatever, and he goes, I'm not sure exactly what he says, but he answers the call to Kingpin, and it's Uncle Aaron's voice, which sets Miles back spinning, going, what the one of the bad guys is his Uncle Miles, or Uncle Aaron, right?
Hold on a second, Todd. Do you have anything to add, Chris, about any of the rest of this before you go?
I don't. I wish I had more time, but I keep muting my mic so you don't hear the ruckus in the background. My kids leaving, my grandkids are in the other room, and they're trying to bust through the door. I have to go wrangle them.
We appreciate you showing up, man.
Yeah, I wish I had more time. I really love this movie. I liked so many things about it, and the storylines that are kind of running parallel. As
oh, we lost you.
Your audio's out.
Your audio's out.
All right, I'm assuming he said his piece and he's leaving. We can't hear you. If you can hear us, we did not hear that last soliloquy you had.
Not sure what happened. We lost you.
Oh well. I think we lost him.
Yeah, I think he's listening to the playback to see.
Perhaps. So hopefully we can get him back and just say goodbye anyway. But I thought they wrote this wrong. And they should have had Fisk call Prowler as he's coming through the window, so that the entire time he's looking for Miles, Miles already has the shock and um, can't believe that his Uncle Aaron is Prowler the whole time he's being looked for, because Prowler just knows someone's in there and he's going to take him out. He wouldn't have taken his mask off, but he could have answered the phone in Uncle Aaron's voice. And then the whole time it could have been scary that he's going to find Miles and shred him if he catches him. And you don't know what's going to happen, but you already have been revealed, because the scary part of being chased by a Prowler in the apartment was worse than the reveal that it was Uncle Aaron, because as soon as it's revealed as Uncle Aaron, he's running out the window and being chased, and it's all about the chase after that, and you don't get to sink in the realization that his one ally in the world who understands him best is one of the bad guys working for Kingpin, and has almost caught him several times before, and now is looking to kill him because he doesn't know who he is. So I think it would have been more tragic and more better played if they revealed as soon as he came through the window that it was Aaron coming back to his apartment and he was Prowler, instead of it being broken up.
It would have led better to the next scene where he busts into the Aunt May's house. A lot better if there was more shock and awe.
Yeah, and
adding to that, to his 13-year-old realization that his hero is not a good guy.
well, I think there was a double failure of the writing. First was, I think they could have done the apartment scene Aaron's better. And the other thing is, he's being chased frantically like he's being pursued by a relentless predator all the way until it's morning and we're having a confab at the apartment again, and now everything's good. It's like, what? We were just in a chase where he was trying to get away with to save his life, and next thing you know, it's all good and it's sunny and it's morning, and then people break through. I was like, he just blew it. It could have
Right.
been he got followed and you think, oh man, I made it. Oof, look, everybody's here. And also, bash, like, no, you didn't make it. You got followed. And not only is it Prowler, but he brought all the other bad guys with him. And now a fat battle's going to go. The stress level could have been to a giant crescendo and they ruined it, cut it in half and started over again. So that was like, and it was also, there was comic relief in the battle scene because Aunt May kept on worrying about her dishes and her armoire and all this other stuff getting broken
And
as the
can
battle's
you bring
going
this
on.
outside?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You guys mind? You're like tearing the place apart. Oh, there goes my vase, and oh, there goes my boudoir or whatever.
One of Chris's grandkids tried to FaceTime him, and it dropped his headset out of sync with his computer. So that's why we lost him.
Yeah, with relatives, they always want to contact you, but so the battle scene with Doc Ock, Goblin, Tombstone, Scorpion, they all show up and start tearing the place apart, tearing the walls apart, trying to get everybody. And meanwhile, they're also trying to protect the goober that they've created.
Because Doc Ock went straight after the goober on
And
Peter B. Parker's chest.
that was why they were chasing them, although Prowler was chasing Miles because he had been chasing him from his own apartment. And he doesn't know who Miles is. He just knows he's one of the guys that Kingpin told him he needs to kill, and he hasn't been able to deliver on that order yet. So he's the guy that delivers. You kind of get the impression that Aaron is a professional bad guy and he delivers. And he's got this awesome Prowler outfit, not because the Prowler outfit makes him who he is, but because he earned his awesome battle armor by being a bad guy.
Yeah.
So they're tearing the place apart. They go eventually with Miles making it out of the room with the goober, pursued by Prowler, who catches him coming through the ceiling and on the roof, chokes out Miles and has him on his tiptoes over the precipice of falling off the roof or being choked out. And as soon as that happens, Miles pulls his mask off to reveal that his uncle's choking him, and it's Miles. So Aaron has this, what? Oh my God. And he's like, no, not because it's Miles and that's tragic, but because he's got to kill this guy and it's Miles. You know, he didn't seem like he was going to stop, and that he knew Kingpin wanted this guy dead, and it didn't matter that it was Miles. He still had to deliver the kill. And then Miles whispers, Uncle Aaron, please don't, please don't kill me, Uncle Aaron, kind of thing. And so Prowler releases him and doesn't kill him. And meanwhile, talking in his ear is Kingpin saying, what are you waiting for? And he basically is like, no, I'm not going to do it. And next thing you know, exactly what you'd expect is that Kingpin shoots him because he failed to carry out his order. And he's no longer doing what he's told. He's not in control anymore. So Prowler gets shot in the back. Uncle Aaron's now been dropped. And Miles has to continue to get away and try and take Uncle Aaron with him so that Uncle Aaron doesn't get killed, because currently he's still gurgling and still alive.
So then you got Peter B. Parker gets in Kingpin's way. Miles grabs Aaron and swings away, and then ends up in an alleyway where his dad sees Spider-Man.
Well, so before his dad even shows up, he has Uncle Aaron, I'm so sorry, this is my fault. And Aaron is like, no, kid, it's not your fault. This is basically my fault. You're the best of us. Which means you're better than he felt his brother was, even though his brother went the cop way. He still thought Miles was better than everybody, and that he was the one that had to continue to press on, because if all this all goes to crap and goes to shit, at least Miles can make it, because Miles, he's in the right place. He's obviously the next Spider-Man, so he's got more potential now. Aaron sees his potential every time he sees him, So he expires, and as he's expiring is when Jeff Davis, Miles' dad, the police officer, shows up and says, freeze. And Miles pulls his mask down so he can't be identified of who he is. And he goes invisible and gets away. So now he's got a little bit more control, but not really, of his invisibility. Gets away from his dad, watches as his dad is mourning over his brother's body. And so yet another shortcoming of the writers in very quick progression from the last two failure scenes where they could have done better. This is where Jeff, the cop father, could have had rage at the tragedy or comedy. It's actually a Shakespearean comedy when people die, not a tragedy, but it is tragic that Aaron's dead now, and the police officer ought to go, I want an APB right now on this Spider-Man, because he's pissed off that his brother just got killed by the Spider-Man as far as he knows. So they could have had a little bit of rage going on.
Could have even had him fire at Miles, like shoot off a couple of shots.
Even into the nothingness after he went invisible, But it could have been the confusion of not knowing that he's invisible, but that he just vanished and he doesn't know what's going on. So he might not have even thought to shoot into the air, or into the nothing. But he came off kind of wimpy as a cop, and I think that he had to make some tough choices to become a cop in a neighborhood where a lot of other people were going the Uncle Aaron way. And I think they wrote his character too wimpy to not have rage moment or something, you know. So I was sort of disappointed with how they handled that right there.
Yeah, they definitely should have had something added to his character.
So we are going long, but I'm just going to keep throwing out ideas. We'll go back really quick to the Bat Cave, the Spider-Man cave. Miles had looked at one of the Spider-Man outfits with capes, and Peter B. Parker's like, no cape. Spider-Man doesn't wear a cape, right? So that reminded me of the E scene from The Incredibles, where she goes, no capes. You know, when when Mr. Incredible wanted some capes, and she goes, do you remember Thunderhead? Tall, storm powers, nice man, good with kids. November 15th of 58. All was well. Another day saved when his cape snagged on a missile fin. And he goes, Stratogar, whatever. April 23rd, 57. Cape caught in a jet turbine. Metaman, express elevator. Dynaguy, snags on takeoff. Splashdown, sucked into a vortex. No capes. You know, so Spider-Man doesn't get a cape, you know, no capes.
Right. No capes.
That's pretty cool. Anyway, I forgot to talk about that. So
Very
no
funny.
capes.
Yeah, because that was back right when they were about to go into Alchemax. When he had the yellow cape on, and then when they got back into the spider cave, then he's looking at the cape. He says, "Look, look, look."
He's got a cape. Yeah.
See, he had a cape. All right, so
All right.